The State of Kuwait is hosting an international conference for donors to Syria aimed at raising about $1.5 billion in donations to help alleviate the suffering of the Syrian people. Nearly 2.5 million people have been forced to flee their homes to seek safety in less volatile areas inside Syria, and hundreds of thousands have fled to neighboring countries for the same reason. On the 24th of December 2012, the Kuwaiti government announced that it plans to host an international conference next month on helping solve Syria's growing humanitarian crisis. Speaking in Bahrain at the opening session of the 33rd Annual Summit of the Gulf Cooperation Council, or GCC, His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah said Kuwait was acting in response to an invitation by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Kuwait has an active role in the international arena, a role that expresses its goodwill and peaceful aspirations. Kuwaiti humanitarian aid has reached all parts of the world through various contributions and offering services in the fields of education, health, social care, and refugee affairs. Kuwait has been a major source of foreign economic assistance to other states through the Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development, or KFAED, an autonomous state institution created in 1961 on the pattern of Western and international development agencies. In 1974, the fund's lending mandate was expanded to include all, not just Arab developing countries. Over the years, aid was provided to Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, as well as the Palestine Liberation Organization. During the Iran-Iraq War, significant Kuwaiti aid was given to the Iraqis, and in the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2000 alone, the Kuwaiti Fund issued loans and technical assistance grants totaling over $520 million. Before we go into Kuwait's philanthropic efforts, it is imperative to take a look at the country's remarkable economy. Kuwait has a GDP, or PPP, of $167.9 billion and a per capita income of $81,800, making it the fifth richest country in the world per capita. According to the 2008 Index of Economic Freedom, Kuwait has the second most free economy in the Middle East. In March 2007, Kuwait's foreign exchange reserves stood at $213 billion. The Kuwaiti Stock Exchange, which has about 200 firms listed, is the second largest stock exchange in the Arab world, with a total market capitalization of $235 billion. In 2007, the Kuwaiti government posted a budget surplus of $43 billion. Kuwait has proven crude oil reserves of 104 billion barrels, estimated to be 10% of the world's reserves. According to the Kuwaiti constitution, all natural resources in the country and associated revenues are government property. Being a tax-free country, Kuwait's oil industry accounts for 80% of government revenue, and subsequently, the increase in oil prices since 2003 resulted in a surge of Kuwait's economy. Other major industries include shipping, construction, cement, water desalination, construction materials, and financial services. Moreover, Kuwait has a well-developed banking system, and several banks in the country date back to the time before oil was discovered. The Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development, or KFAED, was established in 1961 by then Minister of Finance Sheikh Jabir al-Ahmed al-Jabir al-Sabah, the same year as the country's independence, and set a benchmark as the first aid agency from a developing country. KFAED, Kuwait's agency for the provision and administration of financial and technical assistance to developing countries, was set out to ensure that Kuwait's newly discovered oil wealth was put to benefit neighbors and friends alike. The fund was created as a message from the Kuwaiti people, ensuring that here we are embarking on the tides of change, but we will not forget our friends in need. With Kuwait's willingness to share its wealth with others, KFAED has grown to become the Kuwait main channel for foreign assistance, far surpassing United Nations targets for development support in relation to national GDP. Therefore, KFAED supports international initiatives and institutions aiming to achieve international development and stability. KFAED complements Kuwait's foreign policy through its development cooperation with more than 100 developing nations. It also contributes to strengthening friendships between these countries and the State of Kuwait. Kuwait's contributions to other international development institutions, such as the Arab Fund for Economic Development, the African Development Bank, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, and the International Development Association, are normally provided through KFAED and through the agency's own resources. Established to aid other Arab countries, KFAED's recipient list grew following the rapid rise in world oil prices in the early 1970s to include developing countries around the world, and its capital increased from 200 million Kuwaiti dinars to 1,000 million Kuwaiti dinars. Since its inception, KFAED has disbursed $12 billion in concessionary loans and technical grants to 102 countries worldwide. KFAED supplies project aid, mostly in the form of concessional loans, technical assistance and training. Its capitalization reached 2 billion Kuwaiti dinars in 1981, and since then it has been self-financing. Repayments serve as the source of funds for subsequent loans and grants. Kuwait's foreign assistance efforts through KFAED and other agencies averaged more than 5% of the GDP per year from the mid-1960s until oil prices collapsed in the mid-1980s. Between January 1962 and March 2003, KFAED made 631 loans to 99 countries for a total of 3.345 billion Kuwaiti dinars, and it supplied 73 million KD in grants and technical assistance to 163 countries. Slightly more than one half of the commitments in each category went to other Arab states. KFAED also contributed 335 million KD to 8 development institutions. The 1990 Iraqi invasion of Kuwait exposed the ineffectiveness of foreign aid as a generator of diplomatic support for Kuwait among its neighbors and peers. Through the Kuwait Fund, Kuwait maintains a higher foreign assistance ratio as a percentage of the GNP than do other rich capital surplus countries. Kuwait easily achieves and surpasses the target of 0.7% of GNP that the United Nations specifies for development assistance. Since its inception, the Kuwait Fund has given a total of 719 loans to 101 beneficiary countries, totaling 3,857.79 million Kuwaiti dinars. 200 grants and technical assistance packages have been distributed to 88 countries and institutions, totaling 98.54 million Kuwaiti dinars. During the last decades, lending at concessional terms to finance projects accorded high priority by recipient countries remained the fund's main activity. The development operations of the fund covered projects in various sectors, including agriculture, communication, energy, industry, transport, water and sewage, in addition to supporting small and medium private sector projects financed by the national development banks and various projects of social development funds. In 2000, the fund enlarged its coverage to include the health and education sectors. Technical cooperation of the Kuwaiti Fund are financed either through loans or grants. In the period 2005-2006, the share of Arab countries of the total commitments reached 53.9%, African countries 20%, and Asian and European countries 26.1%. The Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development, or KFAED, has extended loans to finance development projects in various countries through signing loan agreements in the year 2012. KFAED disclosed in February that the fund has aided more than 800 projects this year, with loans totaling $15 billion. On January 8th, KFAED agreed to contribute 26.2 million KD towards financing a water network project in Bahrain through a loan agreement. On the same day, KFAED had signed another loan agreement worth 7.4 million KD with China to finance a community college in Gusau City. On the 25th of January, the State of Kuwait donated $250,000 to UNICEF to support relief aid for victims of a massive earthquake that struck the city of Van in Turkey in October 2011. On January 22nd, Kuwait signed a $30 million loan agreement with the Omani government to fund projects in the country. In the month of March, KFAED signed a loan agreement for $5 million with Niger for its road construction and another agreement with Egypt for $105 million towards financing a power plant in the city of Halwan. It also approved a loan of $13.6 million for the Republic of Rwanda for building a key road connecting two cities. Through a loan agreement signed on April 18th, KFAED passed $6 million resources to the Islamic Charity Fund in the Republic of Yemen. In May, KFAED made a contribution of 7.5 million KD for revamp of water and sewage networks in Cuba through signing an agreement with the Bank of Cuba. KFAED also aided small agricultural projects in Mali by extending $25 million by way of agreements in June. In August, the Vietnamese city of Hanoi received 4 million KD to build some of its urban development projects by signing an agreement with KFAED. And in the same month, the State of Kuwait donated $450,000 for the UN Central Aid that helps manage emergencies. In September, the Kuwaiti government made an announcement that the country will extend $500 million to Yemen over the next 3 years. Kuwait also pledged to offer a generous $50 million to the building of vital roads in Yemen in support of all the economic development projects there. The KFAED funding will be channeled to the building and expansions of road and highways in the rural areas, particularly the densely populated governorates, thus facilitating the movement of individuals and goods among these governorates. Meanwhile, Kuwait and the World Bank signed an agreement for $50 million in November 2012 in support of the Palestinian Reform and Development Program. KFAED extended a loan of $10 million to the Islamic Republic of Mauritania after that for financing a state road. Moving to December 2012, KFAED extended a $4 million loan to Liberia for the building of a port. The loan aims to revitalize the economic activities in the southeastern parts of Liberia, particularly the exports of raw materials from the West African country through Greenville Port. The loan will help finance the rehabilitation of the port, including the dredging and expansion of the port's 400-meter-long quay, thus increasing its handling capacity. The loan is the fund's second after a 2 million KD worth loan. The fund offered Liberia 500,000 KD worth grants in the form of technical assistance to the feasibility study of the Barna-Mendikoma Highway project. The fund also financed a railroad in Serbia with a total of $35 million. And on December 17th, KFAED signed an agreement with the Democratic Republic of Korea, whereby the fund shall grant a loan of $21 million to fund the new Pyongyang-Sung Road project. North Korea's Supreme People's Assembly SPA Presidium Vice President Yang Hyong-sop awarded Deputy Director General of Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development, Hisham Al-Wugayan, the Friendship Order First Class in recognition for his significant contributions to boost friendly relations between the two countries. The Kuwait Red Crescent Society is a voluntary humanitarian society provided to help and assist the most vulnerable people without any discrimination as to nationality, gender, color, race, or religious and political beliefs. The KRCS's objectives is to achieve the principles of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies in Kuwait and abroad based on Geneva Conventions and its supplementary protocols. The KRCS also aims at achieving social and medical welfare for all needy people and to provide help, first aid and rescue operations during crises caused by natural or human disasters. Part of the KRCS's goals is to provide assistance and protection to prisoners of war or POWs and wounded individuals during wars, in addition to assisting in the exchange of information among people residing in the occupied territories and POWs. Finally, enhancing the exchange of information and communications with the International Union for International Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies and the National and International Red Cross Societies and Movements. However, the formation of the Disaster Management and Relief Committee was aimed at creating qualified teams for rapid and early deployment to disaster-stricken areas and to assist field teams under one command. The teams respond to urgent and immediate intervention calls made by the International Union of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent Societies. Kuwait Relief Society is working to establish a special center to train relief missions heading to suffering countries in order to offer the best services to aid the victims. Chairman Yusuf Jassim Al-Haji said in remarks to reporters after heading the first meeting of the new board of directors that the society needs a special headquarters to facilitate its humanitarian mission. He called on the states ministers and concerned authorities to offer a temporary headquarters for the society in the meantime. Al-Haji also stressed the importance of establishing a special archive to document all photos related to the work of the society in various parts of the world since its establishment. The first meeting was particularly important as it tackled a number of issues, including addressing interested bodies to take part in the first International Conference of Donors for the Syrian People, which will be held on the 30th of January in the state of Kuwait. Kuwait Relief Society is a voluntary association working to aid victims of disasters over the last 25 years, including 16 specialized institutions and bodies. It works in cooperation with governmental ministries, embassies, charity bodies and institutions in various aspects of humanitarian work. The society was declared in October 2011. In January 2002, Kuwait pledged $30 million to help rebuild war-torn Afghanistan. Represented by the Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development, Kuwait made the announcement at a two-day international conference on aid for Afghanistan in the Japanese capital, Tokyo. The money was allocated to rebuilding Afghanistan and for economic and human development as well as security purposes. Kuwait's intention was to support efforts by the international community to reconstruct Afghanistan and eliminate poverty so Afghanistan can take up its normal position in the international community. International donors at the conference pledged more than $3 billion over 5 years for the reconstruction of the war-shattered country. The humanitarian response to the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake was prompted by one of the worst natural disasters of modern times. On the 26th of December 2004, the earthquake, which struck off the northwest coast of the Indonesian island of Sumatra, generated a 30-meter-high tsunami that wreaked havoc along much of the rim of the Indian Ocean and affected 14 countries. It was one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. Indonesia was the hardest hit, followed by Sri Lanka, India, and Thailand. About 275,000 people were killed, tens of thousands more were injured, and 10 million became homeless and displaced. The Kuwaiti government donated $10 million in humanitarian aid alone and a total of $100 million worth of assistance. The 2005 Kashmir earthquake was a major earthquake centered in the Pakistan-administered Kashmir, also affecting the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province of Pakistan. It occurred on the 8th of October 2005, and it registered a moment magnitude of 7.6. As of 8th of November, the government of Pakistan's official death toll was 75,000. The earthquake also affected countries in the surrounding region where tremors were felt in Tajikistan and Western China, while officials say nearly 1,400 people also died in Jammu and Kashmir and 4 people in Afghanistan. The severity of the damage caused by the earthquake was attributed to severe upthrust coupled with poor construction. Well over $5.4 billion in aid arrived from all around the world. U.S. Marine and Army helicopters stationed in neighboring Afghanistan quickly flew in aid to the devastated region. 5 crossing points were opened on the line of control between India and Pakistan to facilitate the flow of humanitarian medical aid to the affected region, and aid teams from different parts of Pakistan and around the world came to assist in the relief efforts. Kuwait was also the first country to send aid to the isolated mountain villages in Kashmir after the quake. Also, it offered the largest amount of aid in the aftermath of the quake, amounting to $100 million. In 2008, the government of Kuwait graciously donated $2 million to relief efforts in Myanmar, following the devastation caused by Cyclone Nargis. Cyclone Nargis, also known as very severe cyclonic storm Nargis, was a strong tropical cyclone that caused the worst natural disaster in the recorded history of Myanmar. The cyclone made landfall on Friday, May 2, 2008, causing catastrophic destruction and at least 138,000 fatalities. The Labuta township alone was reported to have 80,000 dead, with about 10,000 more deaths in Bogale. There were around 55,000 people missing, and many other deaths were found in other towns and areas. The Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development was also active in promoting technical and financial assistance to Myanmar, including a couple of hydroelectric projects in the country. Kuwait donated $1 million to help relief aid efforts in the earthquake-devastated Republic of Haiti, upon orders from the Kuwaiti leadership to assist. On January 10, 2010, Haiti witnessed a massive quake which registered at a magnitude of 7.0. More than 100,000 were feared dead or injured due to the quake. Arriving in Haiti to survey the destruction for himself, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon said the quake was the worst humanitarian crisis to face the world body in decades. Battling emotional and physical fatigue, rescue teams continued their grim task in the knowledge that the likelihood of finding more survivors was fading with every passing hour. Local institutions and schools in Kuwait also began conducting relief efforts for Haiti earthquake victims. Some collected donations, while others organized various charitable events to help the victims. The 2010 Pakistan floods began in late July 2010, resulting from heavy monsoon rains in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Sindh, Punjab and Balochistan regions of Pakistan, which affected also the Indus River basin. approximately one-fifth of Pakistan's total land area was underwater. That's around 796,095 square kilometers. According to Pakistani government data, the floods directly affected about 20 million people, mostly by destruction of property, livelihood and infrastructure, with a death toll of close to 2,000. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon had initially asked for $460 million for emergency relief, noting that the flood was the worst disaster he had ever seen. The Pakistani economy was harmed by extensive damage to infrastructure and crops. Damage to structures was estimated to exceed $4 billion, and wheat crop damages were estimated to be over $500 million, while total economic impact may have been as much as $43 billion. According to Kuwait Red Crescent Society, or KRCS, Kuwait donated $5 million to victims of the severe floods in Pakistan. The Kuwaiti government lifted a ban on collecting donations. This exception was made on the order to collect aid for floods in Pakistan, and donation camps were set up in mosques and shopping malls across the country. The fundraising campaign, entitled Kuwait is With You, which began impressively at the Grand Mosque of Kuwait, where close to 1,000 worshippers donated generously for Pakistan. The Kuwait Investment Company, or KIA, started an internal company fundraiser for Pakistan, and Agility Logistics of Kuwait mobilized its 1,000 workers to get involved in relief work. The company has offered its entire commercial warehouses full of foodstuffs with cooling facilities and its entire fleet of trucks. It also donated several air-conditioned containers and distributed urgent food items and medicines to 5,000 families in Sindh, and the employees of Agility worldwide each donated their one-day salary to Pakistan. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power disaster was a series of equipment failures, nuclear meltdowns, and releases of radioactive materials at the Fukushima nuclear power plant, following the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami on the 11th of March 2011. It was the largest nuclear disaster since the Chernobyl disaster of 1986, and only the second disaster, along with Chernobyl, to measure level 7 on the international nuclear event scale. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah pledged to give $2 million to help reconstruction efforts of Fukushima, as well as $3 million to rebuild the heavily damaged Sea Museum Aquamarine Fukushima. His Highness Sheikh Sabah also donated 5 million barrels of crude oil at a value of some $550 million, which was distributed through the Japan Red Cross Society to the 3 prefectures of Miyagi, Fukushima, and Iwate. Kuwait's generous donation, which was the largest contribution to Japan by any country during this critical period, was sent upon the directive of His Highness the Emir following the March 11th disasters that left more than 19,000 people dead or missing in the northeastern region. Since mid-July 2011, a severe drought has been affecting the entire East Africa region. Said to be the worst in 60 years, the drought has caused a severe food crisis across Somalia, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Kenya that threatened the livelihood of 9.5 million people. Many refugees from southern Somalia fled to neighboring Kenya and Ethiopia, where crowded, unsanitary conditions, together with severe malnutrition, led to a large number of deaths. Other countries in East Africa, including Sudan, South Sudan, and parts of Uganda, were also affected by the food crisis. The UN declared famine in several African regions in response to data from the UN's Food Security and Nutrition Analysis Unit, a situation they called which has not been seen for 25 years. The State of Kuwait pledged $10 million in relief aid for Somalia. The move came in implementation upon the directives of His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jabir Al-Sabah, to show Kuwaiti people's solidarity with their brothers and sisters in Somalia and to contribute to efforts aiming at alleviating their sufferings. Kuwait Red Crescent Society was one of the first organizations to move in to help victims of drought in Somalia. It also launched an urgent airlift to offer humanitarian aid to Somalia and purchased ships' load of 2,500 tons of rice and distributed them there. Kuwait Red Crescent Society also enhanced its presence in Somalia to oversee the distribution of aid and to meet the different needs of those affected. The government of the State of Kuwait provides assistance in the form of grants to finance urgently needed projects, including schools, hospitals, housing facilities, and other social amenities, especially in post-conflict situations or where countries faced consequences of natural disasters such as earthquakes, floods, and extreme drought. The grants are normally administered and supervised by the Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development. All projects financed from the proceeds of government grants are governed by the procedures applicable to Kuwait Fund supported projects, with due consideration to the nature and objectives of the former type of projects. Kuwait also provides loans for a large number of projects and infrastructure. It also supports several global initiatives and has been providing debt relief to countries in accordance with the conditions for eligibility. Head of the Middle East North Africa Regional Office of the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, Ibrahim Mohammed Osman, affirmed that Kuwait is a leading example in the support of humanitarian efforts due to its role in supporting countries in need. After meeting the president of the Kuwait Red Crescent Society, Barjas Hamoud al-Barjas, Osman lauded the great humanitarian role played by Kuwait Red Crescent Society in responding to crises and humanitarian issues. He said that Kuwait Red Crescent Society has a long history of humanitarian work, whether at the local or international levels. He also stressed that the International Federation of the Red Cross is proud of this serious humanitarian work performed by the Kuwaiti Red Crescent Society and described its efforts as leading. On his part, Al-Barjas illustrated Kuwait Red Crescent Society's role in local and international relief efforts, as well as the cooperation with Arab and international Red Cross and Red Crescent associations. Al-Barjas added that natural disasters that have ravaged different parts of the world call for humanitarian groups to redouble their efforts in order to reduce the impact of disasters and to mitigate its devastating consequences. Meanwhile, the UN Under-Secretary-General for Humanitarian Affairs, Valerie Amos, said the focus of the International Donor Conference on Syria, which will be held in Kuwait on the 30th of January, will be to gather $1.5 billion to help Syrians inside and outside the country. She told reporters following a briefing to the Security Council behind closed doors on the humanitarian situation in Syria that the conference is absolutely critical to start money coming through, adding that this conference was focused on supporting the multilateral efforts, which is the $1.5 billion appeal from December 19, 2012. She further indicated that we have not set a target as to what we expect out of the conference in terms of how much money, adding that she did not expect Kuwait, as the host country of the conference, to contribute more than anybody else just because it is hosting the conference. Amos also thanked Kuwait for the $2 million donation to her office earlier, saying that she is delighted that Kuwait is supporting their efforts. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, or UNHCR, also confirmed the significance of an international conference of donors for Syria that will be held in Kuwait. UNHCR spokeswoman Dana Suleiman said the first international conference is a strong support for the humanitarian efforts made by Kuwait and the UN states, organizations, institutions, and charities to help the Syrian refugees in countries of asylum escaping the violent events in Syria. Suleiman expressed the appreciation of the UNHCR for the initiative of His Highness the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, to hold the conference, expressing deep gratitude for all the efforts made by the institutions and charities in Kuwait to support these Syrian refugees in Lebanon. Furthermore, United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon thanked His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, for convening the donor conference for Syria. Addressing the General Assembly on his priorities during the year 2013, Ban thanked His Highness the Emir for his very generous position to convene this meeting together, which Ban will chair.
We can start next Wednesday at the Syria Humanitarian Conference that I'm convening in Kuwait. I appeal to member states to send high-level delegations and come forward with generous pledges. I call on Syria's neighbors to continue to allow those seeking refuge to cross borders to safety. And I thank His Highness Emir of Kuwait for his very generous positions to convene this meeting together with me.
The target is $1.5 billion over the next 6 months. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed voiced sorrow and pain for the humanitarian tragedy in Syria, where the machine of murder and destruction claiming thousands of lives as well as demolishing everything indiscriminately. His Highness Sheikh Sabah said the magnitude of the conflict in Syria compels us to act collectively within the framework of international endeavors to provide necessary funding and qualified human capabilities to alleviate the humanitarian suffering of the Syrian people. His Highness went on to say that Kuwait realized from the outset that the size of the humanitarian crisis affecting the Syrians both in and outside their country. Thus, His Highness answered UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's call to host an international donors conference for the Syrians, due on the 30th of January.